Hello Serie A fan. We have a winner, as Conte's Inter are crowned with 4 games to play. But there are still prizes to go around. With 3 teams sitting on 69, it's anyone's guess who will be left out. In other news, Rome has a new emperor, clothing status TBD. Parma go down, Empoli come up, and we answer your questions in this episode of Scudetto. Hello and welcome back to Scudetto, your weekly roundup of top-flight Italian football. And first, let me just offer Scudetto's on-air congratulations to Inter on their first Scudetto since 2010. Boaz has been tweeting about it from the Scudetto account this week, but just wanted to say it at the top of the podcast. And I actually asked Boaz, our resident Milanista, for those of our listeners that don't know, to be ready to praise Inter this week. He obviously didn't feel up to this task because he went out and found an inter-season ticket holder to interview instead. So we'll be listening to that shortly. Plus, Roma are currently playing their second leg against Manchester United in the Europa League semi-final. It's very nearly over, and it looks like there's very little chance of them qualifying unless Kenny's actually watching it live. Any news, Kenny?
Yeah, well, I mean, you'll be seeing that my eyes are pretty much popping out of my head here. It's great. It's been an incredible second half. I mean, absolutely nuts. But 3-2 as we start recording with 5 minutes left. So looking unlikely that Roma are going to score 3 goals in 5 minutes. But very, very enjoyable second half. And Roma could have had 5 in this second half, like Man United did in the first leg.
There's no way they would have conceded 6 with Mourinho at the helm.
Yeah, exactly. Just makes it all the more frustrating, doesn't it? Anyway, yeah, we'll be talking about that and definitely the Mourinho part of it at the very least, and then previewing the big game of the weekend. Plus, it's the first episode of the month, so we'll also be doing Ask Scudetto, answering your questions. But first off, the part of the podcast that we've had feedback that people enjoy the most, which is the bit where we don't actually talk about football, but instead drink beers and talk about our personal lives. I'm not really sure what that says about us as football podcasters. But Boaz, I believe it's your turn to go first. So how's your week going?
I'm having a fairly decent week and enjoying the sunshine as it comes out.
Good stuff.
I promised you a running-related story. Last week's story was about people screaming in each other's faces, but this one is actually, I think, is slightly more enjoyable. I read on some running forum that it's common practice to say hello, to kind of wave hello to other runners you see along the road, just because, you know, you're both struggling and you're both like giving it all, and it's a kind of a way to show respect for one another. And as I said, summer is finally in the air here, so I went running along a beach the other day, and it was very hot, and I kind of had sweat in my eyes. The sun was in my eyes as well, and I could see this silhouette running towards me, and I thought, well, this is the perfect chance to pull out this new skill I've just learned about. And I gave him the heartiest wave you could give, like super over the top. And as I looked up and the man came into focus, it turned out he had a hook for an arm. So here's this dude like waving his hand in the air frantically at the guy without the hand. Yeah, good times.
Interesting. Not sure where to go with that one.
What are you drinking, Boaz? What are you drinking? Move on.
I'm having a Lagunitas IPA as I've had in the past.
Very good. Any less controversial or touchy topics that you can take us to, Kenny?
Well, less controversial, I don't know, but we had the Scottish elections today, so I voted in that. That was fun. That's something new that I've done that I haven't done for a year and a half. I also played tennis this week, but I don't have any humorous tales like the ones we get from Tel Aviv, unfortunately. But yeah, it's been a good week all in all.
Okay, and beer-wise, Kenny, what have you got for us?
Yep, beer-wise, I've picked myself up a Barney's beer. It's an Edinburgh brewery, and this one is a Volcano IPA, which is a really, 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 really good one. I'm a big fan of this one.
Stuff. I've actually gone a bit overboard with the fruit theme or fruit-flavored beer theme that we've had on the podcast. I've got something called a tropic Pruno, and the can is extremely brightly coloured, like red, green. What's this colour called? Like pineapple colour, like
Yellow?
yellow. Not really yellow, kind of like yellowy orange.
Pineapple-y.
Anyway, it tastes like it's got
It's a
juice
cool
in it.
label.
It's a cool label, yeah. I'd say we'd tweet it out, but we'll probably forget. Anyway, hopefully that section lived up to its admirers' expectations.
Chaotic expectations.
Yeah, probably time to talk about the football. And yeah, as I said, Buzz, you did an interview for this section, didn't you? Inter season ticket holder John, which we will listen to in a second. But first, just to get the kind of thoughts of the panel. Like, yeah, how impressive have Inter been this season? How much did they deserve this title, Kenny?
Well, I don't think there can be any doubt that they absolutely deserve this. As much as they've in part run away with it as easily as they have because Juventus and Milan have completely fallen away. Inter equally at that important time. There's this thing about Inter collapsing after Christmas, but in contrast to that, Conte had them just winning game after game after game, and we've spoken about it. I'm not sure if it was sort of pre-recording before, but certainly notable that so many of those games they've won by one goal as well, and I say that not as a negative. It's just the fact that they just found a way to win. And there was a period where they won 11 games in a row. It's just relentless, and that's basically what they've been. They've been ruthless, relentless, unstoppable, really. And even though they haven't been absolutely demolishing teams, equally very few teams have been able to get anything off them since the turn of the year. Absolutely worthy winners. And I have to say as well that delighted to see Lukaku pick up a league winners medal, because he has, I think I said earlier on this season, he's the difference between Inter, being title contenders, I think I was saying then, and not. And he has just been absolutely hands down player of the season so far. We've only got four games of the league left, but yeah, really, really happy for him.
Yeah, and Baz, you were saying, or we were talking before about the fact that this probably means more to the players, because although there are kind of experienced and partially decorated players in the squad, a lot of them haven't really won the kind of the biggest prizes in football before, have they?
Yeah, of the squad of 24 players, only 10 have lifted some sort of trophy before. And of those 10, I'm talking in the top 5 leagues in Europe, by the way. And of those 10, 3 of them have lifted just one trophy, which for example, in Ranocchio's case was the Coppa Italia. So definitely this is one of the first major titles. But I wanted to stop you there and just ask you guys if you can tell me who is the player who has won most major trophies in that Inter squad.
Perisic.
Incorrect. He's not even second.
Kenny?
Ashley Young.
Ashley Young's a good guess.
It's not Ashley Young.
Is he second?
Ashley Young is far from second. Even worse than Perisic.
Okay. Well, hopefully our listeners can do a bit better. Do you want to put us out of our misery?
Vidal, who has 15 titles to his name. Not even that closely followed by Sanchez, who has 9, and then Kolarov with 8, and Perisic, who you mentioned, with 7. So yeah, a fairly inexperienced side. Even players who are generally quite far along in their careers in that team, who if this is the first time they lift a trophy. For example, the keeper Handanovic, who John mentions in the interview, who is one of the clear veterans and has never won a trophy. But in general, I think this is further testament to Antonio Conte and his general demeanor and the way he runs his team like a close-knit unit. And to give further credit to Conte, his points per game average is the 3rd highest in Inter's history, just behind Trapattoni from 1988 and Mancini in 2006. So clearly he's been amassing the points with incredible consistency. And Kenny mentioned that run of 11 games, but that was also anticipated by another run of 9 wins in a row. Obviously, Inter blew everyone out of the water, and they just had an extra gear. And the last thing I just wanted to touch upon is that it's super important that Inter don't repeat the same mistakes they made that 10 years ago when they won with Jose Mourinho, where they renewed the contracts of players that were in the twilight of their career but had given so much to the club, and so as some sort of credit, they were given contract extensions, and also the whole club was the whole signing policy was completely off the boil. I think they sold Mario Balotelli, was the only player they got rid of at the end of that year. So a lot of lessons to be learned from 10 years ago, and it's kind of fitting to be speaking about 10 years ago when Jose Mourinho is now in the league.
Absolutely, and we'll get to that just shortly. But first, let's listen to your interview with John Boaz.
It is a great honor to welcome John Traverso, friend of the pod and diehard Inter fan. We've been meaning to talk to him for a while, and obviously with Inter finally clinching the title, it made sense to book this conversation now. So welcome on board, John. How's it going?
All good. Hi, guys.
First of all, obviously, congratulations. You've waited a long time, but I guess it was kind of obvious that Inter were going to win this title for the past few weeks. It's a shame you couldn't be there in person, but how does this title compare to past titles, and how does it feel in general?
Definitely different. Last title was Coppa Italia 2010-2011, which I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately. But different celebrations. We'll have to wait for the real celebrations when the restrictions are over. But it's a good feeling. It's finally we're back on top of the league.
And finally, someone that is not Juventus.
Yeah, Inter was the second chance round. Napoli had a few goes. Rome, Milan. After 9 years, finally the supremacy of Juventus is finished.
It's been a season of several narratives and many heroes on and off the field, I guess. I'm just off the top of my head, Conte, Lukaku, Barella, even Eriksen. Who has been the biggest story for you, and who has been the person that you feel is most associated with this victory?
You said well. Many heroes means that the team in itself did a great job. Antonio Conte definitely needs a lot of credit, as Inter never had this consistency, and this was the main factor that did well for the team. And it's the main difference with the rivals, continuity.
Has Antonio Conte won you over finally?
Not finally. Let's say that the poor appearance in Champions League needs to be improved next year.
And do you think he'll be around next year?
Yeah, he's just playing his usual game. It's like the cat.
And is there any other player that you feel should be highlighted for this season?
Well, Hakimi was the first season of Hakimi. Hakimi is definitely a real train on the wing. He was able to give a lot of support to the attack, and he was a great surprise. Barella did a great season last year, but this season he actually exploded. Lukaku and Lautaro are a great couple. Who else? Eriksen finally found his place in the team and has played very, very good games recently.
We spoke a lot about Eriksen in the early part of the season on the podcast, and obviously Kenny and Oscar are also fans of Tottenham, so they were big fans of Eriksen as a player, and they didn't understand why it wasn't working. But obviously there was a mental switch for him, and also I guess Conte kind of found a way to insert him into the tactics.
Definitely. I think Eriksen was more or less to a dead end with all the situation of the COVID. I think he was the new buy in 2021, and Conte had to find a place for him, and it worked out well.
And as a side note, this was also kind of a victory for let's call them the second lines, Darmian,
D'Ambrosio.
Young, D'Ambrosio, players that maybe didn't feature in every game, but when they did, you knew you could count on them. Darmian got a few goals as well. Do you think that's down to Antonio Conte as well?
Yeah, everyone's part of the team, so he made the most of it of as you said, of Darmian, but also at the beginning of the season, Gagliardini, which made a lot of appearances. I was a bit surprised not seeing recently Vecino or some other players, but even the same Ranocchia was able to play a few games and wasn't a disappointment.
How long has Ranocchia been at the Inter for? Was he there in 2010?
I think he arrived the season after. So he arrived with Benitez, and I think he won the Italian Cup.
So even Frogman has a championship now.
Yeah, finally.
Amazing.
He can retire now.
Let's talk a little bit about, I guess, next season. The calendar was announced today, and who do you think would be the ideal reinforcement for you? Both in terms of position, but also if there is any players that you'd love to see in the Nerazzurri shirt.
Definitely after seeing Hakimi, we need another wing because Perisic is a very offensive player. Darmian is a very offensive. So maybe there might be around a player that can be a bit more complete. We need to start looking for a goalkeeper. Samir has been great, but time is passing by for him. I think maybe Inter should do something like Juventus did in the last few years when they put Szczesny next to Buffon. So next season, I think they should really find a good goalkeeper to put next to Samir and point all on the future goalkeeper. A wing and someone up front. They would actually need someone up front. But unfortunately, with the economy situation, I'm not too sure what will happen. I think it's going to be a very low-profile campaign.
That brings me on nicely to my next question. What is your feeling towards Suning and more specifically towards their reported financial trouble and how that may affect the team?
Well, Suning has done a great job since Tohir has left, apart from a uphill start when they bought João Mario and Gabigol. Those were two huge mistakes, but they seem to have learned quickly where to the areas which needed replacements, and everything started ticking when they hired Marotta. So I think leaving the dealing with the squad with Marotta has been the great decision. Money-wise, I'm not too sure what's happening because it's a general situation with all the European clubs, but especially Italian, as Italy is well known that Italian clubs haven't got the property stadium, apart from Juventus. They need to find the finances elsewhere. They've expanded the brand with their unique advertising, and what can I say? Forza Inter.
I guess since I have you on, I have to ask you about that Inter third kit, the multicolored one. Do you love it? Do you hate it?
The new one for 21-22?
Yeah, the one that was announced a few weeks ago.
I think it's the fourth kit, and they're going to use it as a pajama.
A final question from us before we let you go. Just a few days ago, it was announced that Jose Mourinho will be managing Roma from next season. What are your feelings about this news? And I guess, how do you feel about Mou returning to Italy?
I'm happy for Mourinho until it'll be Inter versus Roma or vice versa, where Antonio Conte and Mourinho will have their usual fight. It'll go back to the old days. And we'll see how the Inter fans will react because everyone knows Mourinho. He's always got good words for his old teams, but you never know with him. So things could definitely change because he hasn't got a team like Spurs, Manchester United, or Inter. Roma is really struggling. They have to renew the team. They've got a few players which he'll definitely work on, but there are others which needs to be bought. And we know that Mourinho has always got a nice list of requests.
And do you think he'll do well?
Well, I always hope that Mourinho does well. I hope he doesn't do better than Inter, but I hope he does well.
And it's going to, as you said, it's going to be real strange to see him in the opposing dugout at San Siro.
Yeah, it's strange, but I think it's strange for in any situation when you got Pirlo coming to San Siro, when you had Inzaghi or people like that. It's when it's history. It's always nice to see these characters that they're still around. But once the game starts, you just look at your plate.
Well, thank you very much for coming on, John. It was a great pleasure, and maybe we can have you on at the beginning of next season to discuss whoever Inter buy and whatever the situation will be, and I guess also the Azzurri.
Definitely. If you want to talk about Wales as well, I'll be supporting Wales, as I'm also a Welsh fan. And
had to get that in there.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Ciao.
Ciao ragazzi e forza Inter. Amala.
Great to hear from John there. Some really interesting points and insight. And just to pick up on what he was saying about Mourinho at the end there, it's a pretty good segue, isn't it, Kenny? Because he actually kind of echoed the comments of Antonio Conte when he was kind of ambushed with the news on air.
Yeah, it did. I think it echoed, everyone's response. Everyone was kind of. It just came out of the blue, and I know that there are certain Roma bloggers as well who we follow on Twitter who basically their response was the same as well. So like no one knew this was coming. But as you sort of alluded to there, it's probably a good opportunity to give a quick honourable mention to Conte for his response, because he was being interviewed by a program called Le Iene in Italy, I think known for playing pranks on people. And they actually showed him, as the news was coming through, they showed him, they were like, Conte, what do you think about this? What do you think about this news from Roma? And he kind of looks at the screen and goes, Mourinho, to Roma, they got him. And then he like does a big smile as if he thinks that it's like this massive prank. And then it dawns on him. Yeah, exactly. It dawns on him that it's actually real. And to be honest, he handles that very well as well, because there's obviously this history of beef between them. And he's like basically said they sorted all of that out some time ago. And it's like great news for Italian football, and that he wishes him all the best, except for in games against Inter. So
that was the bit that matched John's answer. Yeah, but very funny. You can just see that in the video reaction that he doesn't quite believe the reporter at first. Definitely worth checking out. So yeah, what's our kind of overall reaction to this? Obviously, I'd been kind of advocating for Mourinho to come to Serie A ever since he, even before he'd been sacked by Tottenham. I have to say, I think it's Roma are making a big mistake, but yeah, what do you guys make of it, Boaz?
So first of all, I think you mentioned Mourinho coming to Italy in the last or penultimate episode, so if anyone's to blame, it is you. And as our resident Roma fan, you're cursed with having Mourinho for at least 1 or 2 seasons more after having quote-unquote suffered for the past few years.
My two clubs are sharing the cost of him now, so that's worked perfectly for me.
I think undoubtedly from a marketing perspective, this is quite a coup for Roma. Also, I think this is something that has been mentioned by Kenny in our personal chats, but if anything, Roma can be criticized for not being defensive enough, and it's possible that this element of Mourinho's play that hasn't changed over the years will benefit the club. But for me, it's a slightly unambitious appointment. It's ambitious from a balance point of view, because you pay him the big bucks, but the football is not the most exciting, and also unfortunately the results on the field do not return what money you pay him, in my opinion.
What do you make of that, Kenny? How's he going to fit in at Roma, and what's he going to make of that squad, perhaps more importantly?
Yeah, well, to touch on 2 things there, Boaz mentioned it being a big mistake. I think one very big mistake was the timing of the sale of the Serie A TV rights, because I reckon that 20% that they lost, they could probably have got back. Don't
worry, they can still sell the documentary rights to Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, the other thing that Boaz was mentioned was the defensive side, and I think one of the things that we've spoken about a lot on this podcast in the last month or so has been Roma's goalkeeping problems, and no surprise there to see him linked with big keepers. Well, I think one sort of an emerging one in Italy, Musso, is one that's been linked, but the other one, David De Gea from Man United. We don't know how much of that is paper talk, obviously, but that's an area that needs to be addressed. But the other sort of names that I spotted flying around were also from sort of previous clubs that Mourinho had been at, Spurs and United, where it was Eric Dyer, it was Højbjerg, it was Matic. So, I mean, these are, if he can get players like that in, it could actually potentially work out.
I found that quite funny, like, considering he's been blaming all of the problems at Spurs on the players all season. And then the ones you mentioned, I also saw Eric Lamela, who obviously previously played for Roma and was very good for them, and also Lucas Moura. So you think, so which of the players were not performing? I mean, who else is there in the starting 11? Harry Kane?
There was the Dele Alli ongoing saga.
Hasn't been playing for months. I don't think he can take much blame. Anyway, we digress. Yeah. So, but basically, it's not a very balanced squad, and you'd think that Mourinho would want to have a bit of an overhaul, bring in some more sort of solidly defensive-minded players.
Yeah, I think some of those players that Roma have are players that Mourinho has fallen out with before, quite famously. So maybe the clear out will take care of itself.
Yeah, that's true. It didn't take long for rumours about Mkhitaryan moving away from the club to start surfacing on Twitter, did it?
I bet you Chris Smalling and Mkhitaryan are crying in their pillows every night since they heard the news.
But what does this mean, like, for Mourinho? Do we think this is kind of his last chance? Obviously, in the interview, John was saying how Roma are no Spurs, they're no Man United, they're no Inter. There's big problems at that club, and it's a different sort of challenge for him, really, isn't it?
It's a bit harsh to say, but I think it's fair. It's fair to say that football has kind of passed Mourinho by in the past 10 years. The memories he left in Italy were of a phenomenal side that won something that no other side in Italy ever achieved, and they did it. I mean, the league title, Roma made them sweat for it, but I think overall you can argue that it was one of the greatest sides Italy has ever produced. And for me, actually, him returning to Italy is a little bit of him tarnishing his reputation. He did the same in the UK by coming back to the Premier League, having been a legend at Chelsea, and returning and probably not delivering as much as was expected. I mean, the same can be said about his time at United, and I think we all felt that his appointment at Spurs was a little bit of a surprise, and Spurs are probably a bigger side than Roma are, so the fact that it's a surprise that he was signed by Roma shows that his reputation is kind of falling by the wayside. You touched upon the getting new players in, but it's also kind of fun to note that the likes of Zaniolo was 11 years old when Mourinho was last in Italy. Ibanez was 12. Kumbala was like 10. So these players don't even know they probably don't really remember who Mourinho is and what he's achieved even. So the question is, much like at Spurs, will he be able to get into these players' minds and give them that winning mentality that he once was able to deliver?
Yeah, very interesting. I wonder if he'll be appointing a much younger assistant again. He obviously was it Joao Sacramento, I think was the guy's name, the 30-year-old assistant that was...
Well, according to reports in the Gazzetta today, he will be bringing the backroom team that he had with him at Spurs along. So on that basis, that would be a yes. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see as it kind of fleshes out how much is paper talk. And I guess the same applies to all of these sort of fantasy football transfers that we're talking about. Just to put my tuppence worth in, I don't really see De Gea being attracted to, with all due respect to Roma, going from being sort of, one of the stars of the Man United team. What would be in it for him to move to Rome? But
great pizza.
Yeah, well, that's true. Great weather, great pizza, great city, but arguably that would be that would be a very surprising move if he was to opt for that.
Although if De Gea had been playing for Roma and not United in this semi-final, there's a good chance Roma would have edged it.
Roma could have like a 5-year-old ball boy in goal, and it would be better than their current options. They could have a shark with a freaking laser. It would be better.
With a Friedkin laser.
With Friedkin laser. Just to parenthesize this section, I think another little nice parallel is that Mourinho left 10 years ago, and obviously Inter were in top spots, and finally they're back into top spot. But something I found quite interesting was that the likes of Verona, Spezia, and Benevento were all in Lega Pro 10 years ago. So they've made the incredible bounce all the way to the top league. But something that will probably interest this pod, but also interest fans of European football at the moment, is that 10 years ago at this stage, Atalanta got relegated from the Serie A. And who would have thought now that they're probably going to qualify for the third year running into the Champions League?
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
And Mourinho taking charge at the start of next season. So Fonseca very much still in charge at the moment. And although Roma obviously put on kind of a good showing in that second half against Man United tonight, they once again dropped silly points at the weekend, losing 2-0 away to Sampdoria. And they'll be hosting Crotone on Sunday. And looking ahead to probably the biggest game of this weekend is Juventus-Milan, also on that Sunday evening. Juventus coming into it off the back of a 2-1 win against Udinese, and Milan also besting Benevento 2-0. So this one is now kind of really pivotal in that race for the top 4 positions. We've got 3 teams currently on 69 points, Atalanta, Juventus and Milan in 2nd, 3rd, 4th respectively, with Napoli just behind them on 67. So yeah, what the big talking points in this one here? I've got fans have been asking Donnarumma not to play, but what's that all about?
So this is something we've purposely skipped over throughout the season because there's so much uncertainty around Donnarumma's new contract that if we were to talk about it, we'd be giving a completely different story every episode. But essentially, this is a saga that has been continuing since January, and apparently the player has a contract offer from the club that's basically been sitting in his drawer since around January, February. And his agent, Mino Raiola, is obviously agitating for a move, or at the very least, he's asking for 10 to 12 million euros a year, something that Milan as a club are not willing to invest right now. As a result, Donnarumma has been heavily linked to Juve in the past few weeks. And so a group of diehard supporters, with the approval of the club, I should add, demanded a meeting with Donnarumma on the morning of the Benevento match. And they told him that if he did not sign a new contract by the end of this week, they don't want to see him on the pitch against Juventus. Now, this created a whole hoo-ha in the media, of course, but also as a result, Paolo Maldini announced that no contract renewals will be handled until the end of the season, and that that these meetings between fans and players would be temporarily cancelled. But
I was going to
obviously,
say, only in Italy would they have got club approval for that meeting in the first place.
I mean, I think there is. I see your point. I think there is some scope for meeting a few club representatives and understanding what the average man in the stadium feels about things. But when the discussion is bound to be this heated, and when the fans have had issues with Donnarumma in the past, I just don't think it's a wise move to even sanction this meeting. But at the same point, you have to wonder what's going on through these so-called fans' heads to meet one of the players, the best players of the team, and throw him off his game. Apparently, he was in tears after this meeting. And I mean, if I were Donnarumma, I would probably leave. I mean, this is not the first time the fans have been at his throat, and I think that ultimately, I mean, obviously, it will all depend if Milan qualify for the Champions League, but ultimately, he could probably get himself the deal he wants in one of the top clubs around Europe and save himself a lot of hassle and headaches from these lunatics.
Yeah, and he's only like 22 years old as well. It seems crazy.
I should add on that saga that Milan have actually announced that they signed a new keeper today. His name is Magnan, a French guy for 15 million euros, and he's very highly rated. While that doesn't necessarily suggest that Donnarumma is leaving, it still shows that Milan aren't going to be left with not with sand in their hands, so to speak. He's been signed from Lille.
Yeah, good stuff. And in terms of this game, I mean, obviously that could be a big factor if Donnarumma in fact doesn't play.
I think there is no doubt that he will be on the pitch, and the question is, what will his state of mind be like? And God forbid if he does drop a clanger, what will these crazy hooligans do next?
Yeah, and obviously, as we said before, this is kind of massive for both sides, particularly perhaps for Juve and for Pirlo, who he could be kind of out the door if they lose this one, couldn't he? Can he? I mean, it's very possible he won't be there next season anyway, but this could be the kind of final straw.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, to be honest, he was probably about 10 minutes away from being out of the door at the weekend before. I would say Cristiano Ronaldo, but more Rodrigo de Paul kind of saved his bacon with a ridiculous penalty giveaway. But yeah, I mean, this is something that has been discussed over the last sort of month or so, really. There's been growing rumours, as we've already discussed, about Allegri coming back. Now there appear to be growing rumours about Zidane as well. And the Gazzetta today actually was saying that it looks like they are giving him the chance to kind of win the Coppa Italia and guarantee Juve Champions League spot next season before making a decision. But certainly, I mean, Juve have... We all remember how it ended with Sarri, with the public announcements that he wasn't going anywhere and he was going to be there next season, only for him to be shown the door. So I don't really know how much faith you can put into those assurances that if they qualify for the Champions League, even if they do that, even if they win Coppa Italia, how long are Juve willing to go without trophies, and how much time are they going to give what is still a very inexperienced manager, not even just at this level, but I mean, like, let's not forget Pirlo was supposed to be taking over the under-23s, or he did for all of a matter of days before being elevated into the position of head coach. So my suspicion would be that Pirlo won't be there next season, regardless of what happens between now and the end of the season. But nonetheless, yes, I absolutely agree. This is a huge game. Milan and Juve, probably of the teams fighting for those Champions League spots, have the most difficult run-ins. And, a draw doesn't necessarily put anything to bed. But if either one of these teams comes away with 3 points, then all of a sudden it starts looking like a very uphill task. Because one of these teams is going to likely end up outside of the top 5 this weekend, and there will only be 3 games to go.
Well, yeah, that was my prediction before. Obviously, I've been saying for a while that I think Juve are going to be the ones to miss out. But that Napoli draw with Cagliari really did change the complexion of it a little bit, didn't it? Because they're obviously now a couple of points adrift. I know they have got the easier run in, but they could really be ruining that come the end of the season.
I commend you both for being so adult about this, but I'm going to go out and say that there is three clubs on 69 points right now, and the child in me is very amused. That's it, and it's almost a shame. As a Milanista, I'm happy that Napoli dropped points, but it's almost a shame that they did, because that would have meant that there were 4 clubs on 69 and four different people in the 69. No, it needs to be an even number to do a 69, if you ask me. But moving on rapidly.
You've obviously got more experience in organising this sort of thing than me, Baz, but I'll take your word for it. We should just talk about the Coppa changes before we move on. It's obviously been heavily criticised, the idea that only Serie A and Serie B teams would be competing in the Coppa as of next season. Was it Venezia that tweeted something along the lines of absolutely amazingly tone deaf, I think was the tweet, which has gained a bit of traction. And you have to think, coming after the Super League proposals to limit the participation to only the elite teams, I'm inclined to agree with them. Is there any kind of redeeming factors that make this new structure make sense, Kenny? What do you think?
Not for me. No, absolutely no redeeming factors at all. I totally agree with Venezia, and actually the president of Serie A as well released a statement today, I think just a few hours before we started recording, sort of condemning it as well, and just saying that it's absolutely the opposite of the right response, and that people should be moving. If you want to take the sort of gold standard for cup competitions, it's the FA Cup. And it's almost like Italy looks at the cup competition and everyone's like, yeah, but no one gets enthused about it. It doesn't have the magic of the FA Cup. So to me, the reaction to introduce the magic of the FA Cup isn't to just go even further in an extreme away from what the FA Cup is, if that's what the gold standard is. But yeah, it is just, I went on a very frustrated rant the other week just about how football authorities seem to just want to, their response to this sort of threat of breakaway is, let's make our competition more elite. And all that they're doing is just concentrating the money and the power in the hands of the already rich and powerful, to the point where, you know, they do get into that state where they are the bigger draw rather than the tournament itself, because they're the ones that get to sign all of the stars, etc. And this just seems like another one of those sort of circumstances. It's infuriating as a football fan, especially as someone who grew up from a country that is a small footballing country that admittedly has had for many years punched above its weight, but supporting smaller clubs like Atalanta, even when they were in Serie B, I used to go and watch them, and St Mirren here in Scotland. It's really infuriating because, yeah, these mega clubs weren't always mega clubs, and it just seems like all of this is just feeds into that narrative of just like chasing the media rights, when there's nothing really wrong with the sort of television viewing figures of football. It's the most popular sport in the world.
Yeah, can't find too much to disagree with in what you've said there. Boaz, you're waving your hand. Have you got a counterpoint for us?
It's not really a counterpoint. I mean, Kenny touched upon it briefly. I think the Coppa Italia in Italy, akin to some other national competitions, just doesn't have the glamour of the European competitions or the league itself. And I don't think that changing the format is necessarily what will change the situation. And at the same time, we spoke about Jose Mourinho earlier. We spoke about the triplete, and suddenly this cup is important when it's part of this glorious run. But just to give further back into what Kenny said, the current format of the Coppa Italia already favors the teams in the Serie A, because when you enter the competition is determined by your standing in the league. So the likes of Sassuolo, instead of ending 10th, if they end 8th, they will enter at a later stage and obviously have less games and have a more glamorous tie. So already this cup is favoring the so-called big clubs. So really there's no reason to add further weight on their side of the equation.
Yeah. From my perspective, I don't have a problem with with the FA Cup, right? The teams enter later. It's more the fact that in the Coppa, the higher seeded team always gets to play at home. And that takes away those, the best thing about the FA Cup for me is when Spurs go and play against Marine in front of 200 people and their dogs, and some old man shouting out of his back garden to put Lucas Moura off.
Yeah, it's glorious.
I don't know. What were you going to say, Kenny?
Well, I was just going to say, to offer the perspective of someone who has sort of grown up supporting smaller clubs, it might not have the glamour to clubs, and it undoubtedly doesn't to clubs like Milan, Juve, Inter, but it offers an opportunity for clubs to kind of do the unthinkable. And talking about glamour, the Europa League seems like it's a disaster if that's where Juventus end up. But if you put a team like, let's take Monza, because they're a team on the up with exciting players and everyone kind of knows the story that's going on there. If you're Monza and you win the Coppa Italia, you go into the Europa League. If you're a Monza fan and you've like grown up your entire life with them yo-yoing between Serie B and Serie C, then I'm sorry, but that is like that is incredible for fans of those clubs. And that, to me, is the sort of thing that gets neutrals kind of involved in a game that they would otherwise have no interest in. That is what brings the glamour. And to build on what Boaz was saying and what you were saying there, Oscar, as well, yeah, the format at the moment doesn't favour that. So that, for me, is why it doesn't have the glamour. You don't have your smaller teams who can all of a sudden go on a magical European tour that they haven't been on since they were born, supporting the club they were. That is the sort of thing that is a fairy tale story. But for Juve, Coppa Italia is very much second prize. For Juve, Europa League is very much second prize. Same goes for Inter. You know, that is why this is so wrong.
Yeah. And just speaking of fairy tale stories, we have to unfortunately say that Parma's has come to an end as they were officially relegated this week. But that does mean the fight to stay up between the other clubs kind of intensifies. Because we now have Benevento, Cagliari, Spezia, even potentially Torino, all in danger.
And Fiorentina.
Yeah, Fiorentina aren't safe. Yeah.
Fiorentina as well. Also, in the best of the rest section, we wanted to mention the Lazio Genoa game.
Yeah, it was Lazio went 4-1 up, and then Genoa came right back into it. And generally, there was a lot of chances. Despite there being 7 goals, there could have been 5 more goals.
And we've already mentioned the Napoli Cagliari game. Obviously, the scoreline 1-1, but that kind of masks the fact that was also a very exciting game of football, so worth checking that one out. And also, we should highlight that Empoli are official champions as well of Serie B, so looking forward to watching them a bit more next season and learning a bit more about them. Boaz, I'm looking forward to your preview episode.
Just a 2-year absence for Empoli, so and traditionally a fun side to watch. So I hope they bring some of that pizzazz up to the Serie A.
And also in Serie A, another goal fest we should mention: Bologna 3, Fiorentina 3. I think one of those goals maybe gets an honourable. Or not? Yeah. I think one of those goals might be on Kenny's honourable list for later. But as you want to quickly mention Astori.
Yeah, Davide Astori was the Fiorentina captain who died of apparent heart attack while in a hotel room in Udine the day before Fiorentina were set to play, and it's been 4 years since his death. But the doctor Giorgio Galanti, who was then head of sports medicine at Florence's Carraggi Hospital and was the last person to clear Astori to play professional football. He's now been given a 1-year suspended sentence for failing to diagnose the player's undetected heart defect. And obviously, this could have saved Astori's life. It has to be said that we often kind of have a joke and criticize Italian football and the various bodies around it, but in the terms of medicine, they are super on it. And even when Kenny and I were very young boys, we'd get very thorough medical checks. And so for this doctor to have missed an underlying condition is a huge mistake. And I think it's fair that he's been punished for it. And it's a shame it's taken this long, but this will be some sort of comfort for Astori's family he was left behind.
Yeah, or at least some closure, I guess.
We felt that this wasn't this was too serious for an honourable or dishonourable mention, so it's kind of here in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair enough. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. We should just move on to the good week, bad week award now. I think good week, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on.
Unfortunately?
Well, depending on your perspective, that has to go to Inter, just because we've been holding off really from giving it to them for so long.
Yeah.
But definitely deserved. I can't really think who else we could give it to.
The stats speak for themselves, and this amazing run is, I think we're giving them good week for a whole season, but pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Milan Obsession and all of our other Milanista listeners, but it has to be done. And bad week, I think it's hard to look past the team that's been relegated.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is probably the easiest, good week, bad week we've ever had to do. Inter win the league. It has to be Inter for good week. Parma relegated following that 1-0 defeat against Torino. And yeah, quite obviously a bad week, a bad season, capped off by another bad result against another one of their relegation rivals. So yeah, an interesting note on this one. Remember, we were talking the other week about that game against Cagliari, where Parma threw away a lead, not just 2 points, but 3 points in injury time. And that is effectively why Parma are relegated now, because they mathematically could go level on points with the last team, but the last team happens to be Cagliari, and as a result of that victory, Cagliari have a draw and a victory against Parma, so they would lose anyway on the scontro diretto, or the direct matches between them.
Head to head.
Yeah, head to head. So yeah, just bad week. Another bad result against a direct rival, and resulting in relegation. Doesn't get much worse than that, really, does it?
No. Okay, so good week Inter, bad week Parma. Let's move on to our Scudetto. We've been collecting your questions on social media and WhatsApp and other ways. We'll start off with a couple of questions from Josh, who is a Spurs fan who's been taking interest in Serie A since they've been so involved in the managerial merry-go-round with.
I hope Mourinho's appointment doesn't change his mind.
Yeah. So his first question is: there are rumours of Gasperini to Spurs. Is this a good idea, and would he realistically go? Kenny, do you want to take that one?
Sure, yeah. I saw this rumor as well, and it appears to be attributed to one journalist. But to me, I don't really think this makes a whole lot of sense, to be honest. Gasperini is 63 years old. He's coming to the end of his managerial career. He undoubtedly could do a job, I think, at a big club like Spurs, but Gasperini spent his entire playing career, his entire managing career in Italy. What's more, the Atalanta board gave him have given him a huge amount of backing over the years, not least over the fallout with Papu Gomez. I don't think Gasperini, who is given a lot of control over sort of who stays, really, I guess, rather than who comes in at Atalanta, but who stays and who goes, I don't think he would put up too well with Levy's famous brinkmanship and sort of selling players from under the manager's nose and not signing who he wanted, finding like a pound shop replacement for them. I don't think the fit feels right.
Yeah, but I kind of like to see his brand of football, at least at Spurs. I think it would be really exciting. It'd be a sort of throwback to the Pochettino era.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about Pochettino, one of the main reservations I have purely from a personal point of view is that personally I don't want Gasp to be tarnished by Levy, because if Pochettino can, with everything that he did for Spurs, if he can leave under acrimonious circumstances, then absolutely anybody can. And to be perfectly frank, I kind of want to, when Gasperini does retire in 5 years or however long it is, I personally want him to be remembered for the wonderful things that he did at Atalanta internationally. I'm talking about here, rather than being yet another one of Levy's sackings, to be honest. And he might move on from Atalanta, but I think for me, it's just that relationship will never work. Gasperini is a huge character, and Levy obviously, it's his way or the highway. So for me, it's never going to work, and I just don't want Gasperini's record to be tarnished.
Yeah, no, that's harsh but fair assessment, probably. We should answer Josh's other question as well, which I think we touched on a little bit earlier in the podcast, but Zidane to Juve, ? Would it make sense, given that Zidane's obviously got experience dealing with big egos?
I think on paper, especially given that he played for Juve, it would make a lot of sense. The question is, does it make sense in the current financial/COVID climate, whether Juventus can afford his allegedly massive salary demands? Zidane doesn't offer stellar football, but his man management skills have been incredible, and he's probably been, considering he's won 3 Champions Leagues in 4 years. He's probably a little bit underrated compared to some of his peers. I mean, I think if it were to happen, it would be a really good move. I just don't see it happening, at least not this year.
Yeah, I wonder though, do you think he would have the skills for this kind of job where you almost need to instill a new structure? It's not like when he went into Real and they were already very drilled and it was more about just kind of motivating this team of superstars. I think maybe Juve's a bigger job than that now. What do you think, Kenny?
Yeah, I think Juve is a rebuild. It does have to be said that this isn't just like a question out of the blue. Obviously, it's something that has been reported that Allegri is very much a front runner to take over should Pirlo go. And Zidane is also on the radar. But yeah, like you said, the whole job at Juve is about bringing through the younger players, the younger stars, your De Ligts, your Chiesas, your Kulusevskis, and Bentancur, etc., etc. And we haven't really seen any evidence. In that sense, it's almost like a Pirlo situation again. You're employing someone who's done one job and you're trying to get them to do like a totally different job. I mean, when you're a Real Madrid manager, most of your job is about getting the best out of absolute superstars, and the Juve job isn't that. Or at least it's not going to be that for the next manager. It's going to be nurturing the next generation of superstars. So
Yeah, you almost think if they were going to go the Zidane route, the right time would have been last summer. But anyway, we've probably spoken too much about this question. So let's move on. Sigmund has asked us a couple of things as well. When do you think Conte's next outburst will come? And when will he fall out with the Inter leadership? I guess there should be an again at the end of that question.
Again.
I mean, your guess is as good as ours as to when it will happen.
At some point over the summer.
Yeah, I think at some point over the summer is probably a good answer. Any advance on that, Boaz? Even Conte can't fall out with them before the end of the season, given that he's just won the title, can he?
I'm a massive fan of Conte's up and down mood swings, and the fact that he's all smiles right now because he's won the league, but probably in 2 weeks' time he'll be pissed off about someone not marking someone in a practice game in his kitchen or something. I've said it time and time again, but winner mentality.
Yeah. And you can take this next one, Boaz, because it's why are Milan running out of steam towards the end of the season?
We've touched upon it a few times in the season, but I think throughout the season there have been several injuries to key players, and while the club seemed to have done pretty well for itself during these periods, once these injured players came back, they were probably rushed a little bit, and also it's possible that Milan were playing at the proverbial 110% up until January, and that now they're giving 99%, 95%, and it's just not enough to overcome big opposition, and they've probably run out of steam at the wrong time of the season.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Next question comes from Viola Club Israel. I don't know if this one is really for us or for somebody in his life. It's why shouldn't I arrange a one-man drinking party before each match I watch? I mean, from my perspective, no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah, from my perspective, you should do it. Don't let us stop you.
Yeah, go ahead. Any advance on that, Buzz?
You have to ask yourself where these other people in the Viola Club are and why they're not joining you for a beer.
Yeah, so Buzz answers your question with a question. Next one comes from Philip, who says that now that Atalanta are established as properly good, which smaller team should hipsters be getting behind?
Is that trademarked? Properly good? TM. Well, I would throw into the equation a small club from Turin called Juventus. I hear they're going to get a new manager in, and exciting things could be happening. But
Their current manager's a bit of a hipster as well.
Well, that's true. I mean, he owns a vineyard, so. But on a serious note, Sassuolo obviously is the obvious answer. Although De Zerbi may be off. De Zerbi may be off this summer. There's rumors that he could be going to Shakhtar Donetsk, I think it was. So that would be a big shame. But for now, Sassuolo.
What's the new hipster derby going to be? Is another good question.
I would also throw Spezia in the mix solely because they have surprised us with their performances this year, and also they've just been bought over by American owners, so presumably they will want to invest in players, and hopefully their style of play will continue to be as exciting as it has been under Vinny Italian.
Yeah, or
so
Verona.
Looking forward to Sassuolo Spezia, or maybe Sassuolo Verona for the new hipster
Verona,
derby.
although Juric is said to be off as well, so we don't know. I think is the answer.
We'll let you know in August when this league kicks off again.
Yeah, and finally, a couple of questions from Milan Obsession. One for us on the new Coppa format, saying, do you think that the backlash over the new format is warranted, given that no one cared about the competition before? I mean, I think we sort of addressed that in what we were saying, but the answer to no one caring about it is to reform it in a way that will make more people care about it and not fewer.
Or just get rid of it.
I think the only unfair thing is that there isn't the same amount of backlash against the existing Coppa. So on that basis, yes, but no, I don't think it's unfair to be angry about that competition becoming more elite.
Okay, and Milan Obsession's final question, and our final question is that for 8 years, Milan has created many alcohol dependencies, ruined livers due to Milan-induced drinking. Do you think that Milan is the reason Boaz always wants a beer with higher alcohol content? Kenny?
I'm gonna go for yes. I mean, he seems to be a pretty happy-go-lucky guy when he's not speaking about football. So that must be what does it.
I have to say this question has definitely suffers from a little bit of recency bias, because 8 years is definitely, it's not been the greatest of 8 years, but I distinctly remember myself sitting in the stands even when Milan were a phenomenal side and thinking, why do I care so much? I'm going to give myself a heart attack before I'm 25 if I continue like this.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And although Boaz does drink the higher percentage beers, I think we have remarked on this podcast before that he probably drinks the fewest beers of all of the podcasters. Although we're both Spurs fans, so I'm not sure that actually proves anything.
I also, according to my stories, I run sometimes, so maybe that offsets some of it.
I'd just say try supporting St Mirren, Scotland, Atalanta up until about 5 years ago. Now that makes you want to drink.
Well, that explains your drinking, I suppose. And on that note, let's move on to the honourable and dishonourable mentions. Just wanted to give a special honourable to Lukaku, not for his play this season, which we've already discussed on the podcast, but for his response to winning the title and his immediate celebration of getting in the car with his mate, hanging his shirt out the window and just driving around the city singing Campeones, which just fair play. It's exactly what I would do. He was wearing a mask as well, and he was in a car, so observing social distancing.
It goes back to our earlier discussion. He's just not used to winning titles.
Yeah, perhaps that is a fair comment. And Kenny, you want to get your dishonourable out of the way early this week?
Yeah, and I touched on this. I touched on this earlier because I just couldn't wait. But it's for Rodrigo de Paul for that penalty that he gave away when Udinese were leading 1-0 against Juve with I think less than 10 minutes to play, or around 10 minutes to play. I think it was a Cristiano Ronaldo free kick, and he just kind of inexplicably stuck his entire arm out, not in front of his face, it's not even to protect himself, but just in a sort of like a wing position. Just absolutely brainless, and for a player who's absolutely fantastic, bit of a shame to see that. But like, to do that when you're 1-0 up against Juventus, and you don't need me to tell you that Udinese don't get many wins against Juventus, so they went on to lose that game 2-1.
Yeah, that's pretty disgraceful. I'll get my dishonourable out of the way while we're on this topic, actually, and just give one to the Inter fans that gathered in huge crowds with very few masks in the streets to celebrate the victory. I mean, given that the COVID rate's still quite high in that part of the world, I think not really appropriate. I mean, you can understand that people want to celebrate, but just, get in your car and drive about with your one mate who's in your bubble, like Lukaku.
Or throw firecrackers at some guy riding his bike.
Anyway, dishonourable for those people. Boaz, you've got one here. I'm not sure if it's an honourable or dishonourable from the way you've worded it, but it's for Moise Kean.
Yeah, Moise Kean has surprised many this year, but getting way more playing time for PSG than was expected and scoring quite a lot of goals. I think he's probably going to be one of the big questions for Mancini this summer for the Euro. And but I'm giving him an honourable for his off-the-field antics. This Sunday, seemingly out of his own accord, not part of some sort of campaign or anything, but him and what looks like his entourage headed out to the north of Paris and kind of handed out food and kind of essential goods to homeless people. And obviously he then had to document it on his Instagram, but still it's a really lovely gesture. And it as I said, it seems to be quite spontaneous. So super kudos to him.
Yeah, fair play. And back on the pitch, Kenny, we've got one for Rodrigo Palacio.
Yeah, this one's for Bologna's Palacio, who became the oldest ever player to score a Serie A hat-trick in that thrilling 3-3 draw at the weekend. He's almost tempted to give him a dishonourable straight away afterwards, just for the fact that he absolutely point blank has been refusing for years to shave off that what can only be described as a nauseating rat tail, asymmetrical rat tail. So I'm gonna hold off on that temptation and just register it as an honourable mention for what is a great achievement with a horrible hairstyle.
Yeah, it's an inclusive podcast.
And we have to say that he'd only managed one goal before this match this season, and it was towards the beginning of the season. So he's waited a long time to get this hat trick.
Yeah, other hairstyles are available. I wanted to give an honourable to a Milan player for Kessie.
Yeah, I'm slightly veering into Kenny territory here with goals or getting very close to the goal itself. But Milan scored a lovely opener against Benevento this weekend, and it came through a nice set of interplay and passes between players. And but something that I really enjoyed about it was that Frank Kessie lets the ball run through his legs, not once but twice within the move, thus facilitating Calhanoglu's run towards the goal.
Yeah, and on that exact point, Calhanoglu features in your goals honourable, doesn't he, Kenny? Who else has made the list?
Absolutely, yeah. So my goals honourables this week. So the theme is just incisive, quick passes followed by absolutely deadly finishes, and the three goals that sort of followed.
Could describe a lot of goals.
Yeah, well, the three goals that particularly followed this theme were Osimhen's opener for Napoli, Calhanoglu's for Milan that Boaz just referenced, and Gosens for Atalanta in their game against Sassuolo. But I also have an honourable on a different theme for Luis Alberto, and this theme is just for footballing poetry, because, I mean, just the grace with which he just placed the ball into the top corner from a standing position was absolutely wonderful, and that's definitely one to go and dig out on YouTube.
Yeah, if you watch one goal that's just been mentioned on YouTube, probably I would go with that one.
Lovely control for Osimhen's as well, though, and the technique from Gosens was incredible, and as Boaz mentioned, the Calhanoglu goal was just lovely.
Well, check out all four then. I've got one more honourable mention as well. Just it's kind of strange to be giving this man an honourable given the last few weeks, but it's for Agnelli for sending a classy message to Inter chairman Steven Zhang. He said, Well done, Stephen. Happy for you and proud of being your loyal opponent on the pitch and friend off the pitch. We'll be back. I mean, Agnelli shouldn't be on the pitch, is my first comment to that. But I guess he can have an honourable. And Boaz, you want to wrap this honourable section up with one for a young Roma player?
Yeah, it's been a week to forget for Roma as a whole. They've been knocked out of Europe, and they lost 6-2 to United, and then they also lost to Sampdoria 2-0. Probably, as I said, a week that they'll want to delete out of their history books. But one small shining light in this week was that Roma Primavera youngsters Ebrima Darboe made his full team debut. And the reason why this is an honorable mention for me is because Darboe arrived to Italy from Africa as a migrant child without his parents when he was 14. He left his native Gambia and kind of jumped on one of these boats. And also he was subject to a lot of physical abuse while he was in Libya. So generally not an easy upbringing. And for him to arrive to Rome and eventually break into the first side that's just shy of 20 years old is a real testament to his spirit, I suppose. And I wish him all the best with his career. But even if this will be his only game, it's massive credit to the guy.
Absolutely. And that's the true Serie A fairy tale, really, isn't it? Love to hear those stories. That is all we've got time for this week. If you don't already, please do subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your audio. We'll speak to you next week. Until then, enjoy the football.
Che sta decretando lo scudetto del Milan in questo preciso istante. La Juventus è campione d'Italia. Questa data, il 6 maggio.
Anticipo, la Roma è campione d'Italia per la stagione 2000-2001.